I call a member for Balmain.
Mr Temporary Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity to address this bill this evening in the House. The Crimes, Domestic and Personal Violence Amendment Information Sharing Bill 2013 seems modest, but is in fact quite significant. We've heard a lot of members talking about the process and the mechanics of the bill, and I won't be addressing those matters because they've already been well ventilated in the House. But I just note that the importance of this is because during the Auditor General's, if you look at the Auditor General's report that explored this issue in detail, and also the Domestic Violence Standing Committee, the police force, the New South Wales Police Force, emphasised the inability to share information was, quote, arguably the single biggest issue, end quote, that requires addressing in respect to family and domestic violence. That's significant. Arguably the biggest single issue. So we hear a lot about resourcing, we hear a lot about culture, we hear a lot of different issues. This is obviously a significant step forward, but of course a lot more needs to be done. As members have explained, White Ribbon is something that we men should participate in quite strongly. I'm a White Ribbon ambassador in my community. I work closely with the Area Commander and others on White Ribbon Day, and I've given speeches in this House on that matter. I wanted to acknowledge the role of domestic violence liaison officers, those who deal with family and domestic violence, and the Leichhardt Area Command, which is one of the key areas in my electorate. It's very clear that the work of the DVLO and other officers is absolutely critical. And we know that when mixed with alcohol in particular, the domestic and family violence is as the Assistant Commissioner made clear at a recent speech, that there's family and domestic violence, and there's daylight, and then there's other crimes that police investigate and seek to manage. So we know that this is an important part of the process to allow for the collaboration, for the coordination and the collecting of information. It's also important to note as well that with this legislation, it's an opportunity to reduce the load on those organisations that pick up the pieces as a result of family and domestic violence. And I referred to the Elsie Women's Refuge in my electorate, which was a groundbreaking feminist initiative in what was the Glebe Estate, and it exists still today, providing fantastic services for women and their families in that refuge. And I'm very proud to say we were able to gain significant funding for Elsie to upgrade their kitchen as part of the Community Building Partnerships program. That organisation, like Detour House and others in the community, are ones that pick up the pieces after domestic and family violence has taken place. And that's why this bill is important, to ensure that we minimise, where possible, any type of family and personal violence. But we also have to continue to press ahead to change culture, to change the attitude of men, to ensure that the violence that we see perpetrated predominantly against women is something that must stop. And I, in conclusion, Mr Temporary Speaker, add my name to that call from all the members who have stood here today representing the Greens, but also my electorate, that this is something that must stop, that we must all be vigilant against, we must organise against and mobilise against, and do what we can to try to create a more just and tolerant and equal society. Finally, can I say thank you to the Attorney General and all the staff who I know have worked on this issue. A lot of work was already done. A lot of the heavy lifting was done by the Auditor General and also by the committee, but it's always up to those staff that work in Ministers' offices and in the relevant departments to make it happen. So I support the bill, I commend it to the House, and I look forward to us discussing these matters of personal, family and domestic violence more in the future to see what we can do to add our voices and support opportunities to fight and campaign against this terrible action which has such significant impacts on our community.
Mr Speaker.